The grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel sparkled with golden anniversary decorations as 200 guests celebrated my parents' 50 years of marriage. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with white roses and gold linens. I sat at table 12, not the family table, but close enough to witness the festivities while remaining appropriately invisible. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced over the microphone, "please welcome Robert and Patricia Chen for their anniversary waltz." Applause filled the ballroom as my parents took the dance floor. Dad, distinguished in his rented tuxedo, spun Mom gracefully as the band played "The Way You Look Tonight." They looked genuinely happy, lost in their moment of celebration. From my position in the back, I watched my extended family enjoying the elaborate party. My brother David sat at the head table with his wife and twin daughters, looking every inch the successful pediatric surgeon he'd become. My sister Michelle held court at table 2, regaling her tablemates with stories from her latest art gallery opening. The party had cost them everything they had plus some they didn't have. I knew this because Mom had called me 3 weeks ago, crying about their financial situation and begging me to contribute whatever I could afford to help make their anniversary celebration decent. "We've saved for 2 years," she'd sobbed over the phone, "but it's not enough for the kind of party your father deserves after 50 years of marriage. David and Michelle have already contributed so much, but we're still short." What she hadn't told me was that they'd also forged my signature on documents to sell my apartment to cover the remaining costs. I discovered this 2 days ago when my property manager called to inform me that someone claiming to be my legal representative had approached him about selling Unit 47B. Unit 47B was my apartment, a modest 2-bedroom on the 47th floor of the Meridian Tower that my family believed was my actual home. What they didn't know was that I owned the entire building, including the penthouse that spanned the top 3 floors where I actually lived. "Sophia." My cousin Jennifer waved me over to her table. "Come sit with us. There's an empty chair here." I made my way through the crowd, acknowledging relatives with polite smiles. The Chin family gatherings always felt like performances where everyone played their assigned roles. David the golden boy, Michelle the artistic success, and me, well, I was the question mark. "So Sophia," my Aunt Linda asked as I settled into the chair, "how's the nonprofit work going?" "Still helping those underprivileged kids with their computers." "Still working in technology education," I confirmed, which was technically true. Phoenix Learning Solutions, my educational technology company, had revolutionized online learning platforms for underserved communities. We just signed contracts with 17 countries and generated $2.8 billion in revenue last year. But to my family, I was just Sophie who works with computers for charity. "That's sweet," Linda continued, "but don't you think it's time to consider a more lucrative career? David's practice is doing so well, and Michelle's gallery just had that successful show in New York." "I'm content with my work," I said quietly. "Content doesn't pay the bills though," Uncle James interjected. "I heard your parents had to help you with rent again this month." "Actually, they tried to help me with rent by selling my apartment without my knowledge." The irony was exquisite. "Speaking of apartments," Jennifer added, "my real estate agent told me someone just bought the entire Meridian Tower building. Can you imagine having that kind of money?" "Your building, right, Sophie?" "Right," I nodded. "Very expensive building. Must be intimidating living around all those wealthy people," Linda said sympathetically. "I hope they're not snobby to you." Before I could respond, the DJ's voice boomed across the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, the happy couple would like to share a few words." Dad took the microphone first, beaming with pride and champagne-fueled confidence. 50 years ago, I married the most beautiful woman in San Francisco," he began, earning appreciative applause. "Together we built a life, raised 3 children and created memories that will last forever. Tonight's celebration represents more than just our love story," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "It represents the success of our family. Our son David saves children's lives every day as one of the city's top pediatric surgeons. Our daughter Michelle has built an art empire that spans the country. I noticed he didn't mention me yet. And our youngest, Sophia, works tirelessly to help underprivileged children, even though it doesn't pay well. We're proud of her dedication to service, even if it means we sometimes help her with basic expenses." There was my role in the family narrative. the noble but financially struggling daughter who needed parental support. Mom took the microphone next, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. This party wouldn't have been possible without sacrifices from our entire family, she announced. David and Michelle contributed generously as always. And, she paused dramatically, we made the difficult decision to sell Sophia's apartment to cover the remaining costs. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. I felt 200 pairs of eyes turn toward me. We sold your apartment to pay for this party. Mom declared triumphantly as if this were wonderful news. Dad laughed heartily and added, you'll thank us later. This party will create memories that last forever. An apartment is just a place to sleep, but tonight is a celebration of family legacy. The crowd applauded as if my parents had made some brilliant financial decision. My siblings nodded approvingly from the head table. I stood up slowly, every guest watching my reaction. The ballroom fell silent except for the soft jazz music still playing in the background. Congratulations, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the room. I smiled genuinely at my parents. You've certainly created a memorable evening. See. Dad beamed at the crowd. Sophia understands. Family comes first. Absolutely, I agreed. Family always comes first. I made my way to the dance floor where my parents stood, microphone still in Dad's hand. Mom, Dad, could I have the microphone for just a moment? Of course, sweetheart, Mom said, handing it over. Do you want to say something about the sacrifice we all made for tonight? I do want to talk about sacrifices, I said, adjusting the microphone. And about family. The ballroom was completely quiet now, every guest leaning forward to hear what the daughter who'd just lost her home had to say. First, I want to thank my parents for this beautiful party. The decorations, the music, the venue, everything is absolutely perfect. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I also want to acknowledge the financial creativity that made tonight possible. It takes real ingenuity to fund a celebration like this. Dad puffed up with pride. However, I continued, my voice still calm and pleasant, I think there might be a small misunderstanding about the apartment situation. Misunderstanding? Mom's eyebrows furrowed. Yes. You see, when you sold apartment 47B to pay for tonight's party, there was one detail that might not have been clear in the paperwork. I paused, looking around the ballroom at 200 expectant faces. The apartment you sold was actually the penthouse of a building I own. Silence. Complete absolute silence. I'm sorry, what? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Meridian Tower. I purchased the entire building 3 years ago through my company Phoenix Properties. Apartment 47B is the penthouse. It occupies the top 3 floors and is valued at approximately $12 million. More silence. Someone's champagne glass hit the floor. But you live in a small apartment, Mom said weakly. I live in the penthouse. I maintain apartment 47B as my mailing address for privacy reasons, but my actual residence spans floors 47 through 49. That's impossible, David called out from the head table. You work for a nonprofit. I run a nonprofit educational foundation as part of my company's social responsibility program. Phoenix Learning Solutions has offices in 43 countries and generates approximately $2.8 billion annually. The ballroom erupted in whispers and shocked exclamations. Sophia, Dad's voice shook. If you own the building, then who bought the apartment? My property management company bought it back immediately when they discovered the unauthorized sale. It's sitting in escrow pending resolution of the forged signature issue. Forged signature? Mom went pale. The signature on the sale documents. Since I never actually signed them, the sale is invalid. My legal team is currently investigating how my signature appeared on documents I never saw. Dad dropped the microphone, which hit the floor with a loud thud. Sophia, he whispered, we didn't forge anything. The real estate agent said you'd already signed. He had all the paperwork. That's interesting, I said, retrieving the microphone. Because the real estate agent you worked with, Martin Reynolds, doesn't actually have a license. He's been under investigation by the State Real Estate Board for fraud. What? Mom grabbed Dad's arm for support. It seems Mr. Reynolds has been running a scam targeting elderly couples, convincing them to sell properties they don't actually own by using forged documents. You were his victims, not his accomplices. Relief flooded their faces, followed immediately by horror as they realized the implications. But if the sale was fraudulent, Dad said slowly, then where did the money for tonight come from? That's the really interesting part, I continued, addressing the stunned ballroom. According to my accountants, Phoenix Properties received an insurance payout this morning for damages related to the attempted fraudulent sale of our penthouse unit. The payout was exactly enough to cover the costs of tonight's celebration. I don't understand, Mom said. The insurance company paid out immediately because we have a policy that covers fraud attempts on our properties. The payment was automatically transferred to cover any legitimate expenses incurred by the fraud victims. In this case, the costs you'd already committed to for tonight's party. Dad stared at me. You paid for our anniversary party? Technically, the insurance company paid for it. I just made sure the claim was processed quickly enough to avoid any embarrassment tonight. But why would you? Mom started then stopped. Because you're my parents. Because you've been married for 50 years. Because you deserve to have the celebration you dreamed of, even if you went about funding it in a problematic way. The ballroom was still completely silent, 200 guests processing this revelation. Sophia, David called out, his voice shaky, if you own $1 billion company, why didn't you tell us? Because you never asked what I actually did for work. You just assumed I was struggling financially and needed help. But your apartment, your car, your clothes, Michelle gestured helplessly, are all deliberate choices. I prefer to live modestly in public while building my business privately. It helps me stay focused on work rather than lifestyle. How long have you been successful? Dad asked. Phoenix Learning Solutions has been profitable for 8 years. We went international 5 years ago. We became a unicorn company 3 years ago when our valuation hit $1 billion. A unicorn what? Uncle James called out. A startup company valued at over $1 billion, I explained. We're currently valued at $4.2 billion. More stunned silence. Sophia, Mom's voice was very small. If you're so successful, why did you let us help you with rent and expenses? You never actually helped me with rent. You offered to help and I politely thanked you, but I never accepted money from you. But we sent you checks, which I deposited into a college fund for David's daughters. I figured if you wanted to give away money, it should benefit the family's future. David's mouth fell open. The girls' college funds, he asked weakly, are fully funded through graduate school, thanks to your parents' generosity over the past 3 years. I looked around the ballroom at my family's shocked faces. I think there might be some confusion about who I am and what I do, I continued into the microphone. For the past 8 years, while you all assumed I was struggling financially, I was actually building one of the largest educational technology companies in the world. But you never said. Michelle started. I tried to say, remember last Christmas when I offered to help David expand his practice? You all laughed and said I should focus on getting my own life together first. David flinched visibly. Remember when I suggested Michelle consider international markets for her gallery? You said art business was too complex for someone who works with computers. Michelle looked like she might cry. Remember when I offered to fund Mom and Dad's retirement so they could travel? You said I was being ridiculous because I clearly don't understand money. My parents just stared at me. Every time I tried to share my success or offer help, I was dismissed as someone too financially naive to understand real business. So I stopped trying. Sophia, Dad's voice broke. We had no idea. You had no idea because you never asked. You just assumed. For 8 years, you assumed I was the family charity case instead of asking what I actually did for work. What do you do? Mom whispered. I develop AI-powered educational platforms that make high-quality learning accessible to underserved communities worldwide. My technology has reached 43 million students across 6 continents. We've partnered with UNESCO, the Gates Foundation, and 17 national governments to democratize education. That's... David paused, processing. That's incredible. Last month, we launched a program that provides free college-level courses to refugees. Next month, we're opening learning centers in rural areas of 12 countries. Next year, we're planning to reach 100 million students. Sophia, Michelle said quietly, that's not just successful. That's world-changing. It's my life's work, I said simply. Dad took a shaky step forward. Sophia, I don't know what to say. We've been treating you like someone who needed your help instead of someone who could offer help. I finished. Yes. The question is, why did you prefer to see me as unsuccessful rather than asking about my actual work? Dad thought for a long moment. Because, he said slowly, it made us feel more important. Having someone in the family who needed help made us feel like successful parents. At least he was being honest. And when you offered to help us, Mom added, tears streaming down her face, it threatened our role as the parents who take care of their children. We weren't ready to see you as an equal. Much less as someone more successful than us, David said quietly. Success isn't a competition, I said. We can all be successful in different ways. But your success is. Michelle gestured helplessly. It's enormous. It's intimidating. Only if you make it about comparison instead of celebration. I looked around the ballroom at 200 faces still processing this revelation. I have a suggestion, I announced. Instead of spending the rest of the evening discussing my company's valuation, why don't we celebrate what we came here to celebrate? 50 years of marriage between two people who raised 3 children and built a family. But Sophia, Mom said, we need to talk about what happened tonight. About how we've treated you. We will talk. But not tonight. Tonight is your anniversary party, and you deserve to enjoy it without the drama of family revelations. How can we enjoy it knowing what we did to you? Dad asked. By understanding that I'm not hurt by your assumptions about my life. I'm disappointed that you never showed enough interest to learn the truth, but I'm not damaged by your lack of knowledge. I paused, looking at my parents. What hurts is not that you didn't know about my success. What hurts is that you never thought I was capable of success. We thought you were capable, Mom protested weakly. You thought I was capable of noble failure. Of trying hard and falling short. Of needing rescue. You never thought I was capable of actually succeeding beyond your expectations. Dad nodded slowly. That's true. And that's our failure, not yours. So here's what we're going to do, I continued. We're going to finish celebrating your anniversary. We're going to dance and laugh and take pictures and create the memories you wanted to create tonight. And tomorrow? Mom asked. Tomorrow we start over. We get to know each other as adults, as equals, as family members who respect each other's choices and achievements. Can you forgive us? Dad asked. I already have. The question is whether you can forgive yourselves for underestimating your own daughter. David stood up from the head table and walked over to us. Sophia, he said formally, I owe you an apology. Not just for tonight, but for years of treating you like someone who needed my advice instead of someone whose advice I should have sought. Thank you, I said simply. Michelle joined us next. I've been so focused on being the artistic sister that I never bothered to understand what you actually create. I'd like to learn about your work if you're willing to share it. I'd like that. Uncle James stood up from his table. Sophia, I've been sitting here doing math in my head. If your company is worth $4.2 billion and you own it. I own 67% of it, I clarified. Then you're worth more money than I'll ever need, I finished. Which is why I spend my time focused on educational impact rather than personal wealth accumulation. That's admirable, Aunt Linda said, approaching our group. But it's also a little intimidating for those of us with normal jobs and normal bank accounts. Why is it intimidating? I asked genuinely. Because it makes us feel small. Linda, you're a social worker who spent 30 years helping families in crisis. David saves children's lives. Michelle creates art that brings beauty to the world. Dad spent 40 years as an engineer building infrastructure that keeps our city running. Mom raised 3 children while working as a nurse. I looked around at my family. I write computer code. Important computer code that helps people learn, but still just computer code. None of us is more valuable than the others. We just work in different fields. But the money, James started, is a byproduct of creating something people find valuable. The money isn't the point. The impact is the point. Dad stepped forward and took my hand. Sophia, would you dance with your old man? I think I'd like to get to know my successful daughter a little better. I'd love to, I said. As the band played a slow waltz, Dad and I took the dance floor. The ballroom gradually resumed its celebration, but with a different energy. More thoughtful, more genuine. Tell me about your company, Dad said as we swayed to the music. Really tell me. I want to understand what you've built. So I told him about the refugee children in Syria who were learning calculus through our platform. About the rural villages in Kenya where our solar-powered learning stations were providing the first educational opportunities in generations. About the partnership with UNESCO to create curriculum in 37 languages. As the evening continued, family members approached me with genuine curiosity instead of polite dismissal. David wanted to understand how AI could be applied to medical education. Michelle was fascinated by the intersection of technology and creativity in our learning platforms. Mom spent an hour asking detailed questions about our work with underserved communities, her nursing background making her particularly interested in our health education programs. But the most meaningful conversation happened near the end of the evening when Dad pulled me aside. Sophia, I have a confession to make. What's that? I've been proud of you all along. Even when I thought you were struggling financially, I was proud of your dedication to helping others. But I was also worried about your future. Worried how? Worried that your good heart would leave you vulnerable. That your generosity would be taken advantage of. That your idealism wouldn't pay the bills. And now I realize that your good heart is exactly what made you successful. You didn't build a company to get rich. You built it to help people. The money followed because you created real value. That's exactly right. I also realize that you've been taking care of this family in ways we never knew. The college funds for David's girls. The insurance policy that paid for tonight. You've been protecting us while we thought we were protecting you. Family takes care of family, I said simply. Yes, but usually the parents take care of the children, not the other way around. Dad, I'm 31 years old. We're all adults now. We can take care of each other. He smiled. I guess that's something I'm still learning. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, my family gathered for final photos. But instead of the usual arrangement, successful siblings in the center, struggling daughter on the side, Mom insisted I stand between her and Dad. For 50 years, she announced to the photographer, we've been proud of our family. Tonight we learned we had even more to be proud of than we knew. 3 months later, I sat in my actual home, the penthouse that my family now knew I owned, hosting Sunday dinner. David brought his daughters who were fascinated by their aunt's work and had started learning coding through our kids' programming platform. Michelle had partnered with us to create art-integrated learning modules that were showing remarkable results in creative education. Mom and Dad had taken early retirement and were volunteering with our domestic outreach programs, helping set up learning centers in underserved communities across California. Sophia, Dad said over dessert, I have a business proposition for you. Oh. We've been working with your team on the Rural Learning Center project, and we think there's an opportunity to expand faster than currently planned. Tell me more. What if we created a family foundation? Not just you funding everything, but all of us contributing our skills and resources to build something together. I looked around the table at my family, no longer playing their old roles of golden boy, artistic daughter, and struggling youngest child, but functioning as a team of adults with complementary skills and shared values. I think that sounds perfect, I said. 6 months after the anniversary party that changed everything, the Chin Family Foundation announced its first major initiative, a $1 billion commitment to provide free high-quality education to underserved communities worldwide. The foundation combined my company's technology platforms with David's medical expertise, Michelle's artistic vision, and our parents' decades of experience in public service. But more importantly, we had learned to be a family again. Not a family built on roles and assumptions, but one built on respect, curiosity, and genuine support for each other's dreams. The greatest success, I realized, wasn't building a $1 billion company. It was building relationships where love and respect could coexist, where family members could be both successful and supportive, where nobody had to fail for others to feel valuable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong about your failures. Sometimes it's showing them what family can look like when everyone succeeds together.